Thank you, everybody. Welcome to today's council meeting of 29th of August. We have had the council prayer this morning in finance, so we will not repeat it. I have no apologies from councillors. We have a full turnout. Thank you very much, councillors. I'll move then to public forum. Greg, if you'd like to come forward. And for those online, we have explained the rules around public forum being 10 minutes, right of speech to council, including question time. And Greg, your time starts now. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you for the approval to address the council. I draw your attention to the council's order paper for Thursday this week. Item 10.1, reports for consideration of Maori wards and response to the legislation change. In my opinion, there is a number of mistruths that are included in the report and these need to be addressed as it appears on the surface. And to the public, council is painting a picture of disharmony, untimeliness and untrustworthiness through the process. I do state, however, that I do not have time to address all the flaws in the reports referred to here. First up, the public-facing side of council. In the Mayor's additional report, that's in the order papers, LGNZ Conference 21 to 23 August. Quote, the support of Maori wards from councils was evident by the positive 83.5% support from councils, unquote. I challenge this unnaturally high figure as being non-representative of the community. It was widely reported that not only mayors were in attendance at this meeting, but bolstered by selected councillors. Virtually every speaker spoke in support. We know speakers are chosen and not randomly selected from participants. It would also be interesting to know the reasons that the entrenchment remit failed, that is to say, the for and against arguments. It would be quite useful to know that. I've also spoken previously on the Bulls Facebook group, Bulls Locally NZ, about the dangerous waters that Rangitikei District Council dove into, purporting to represent the public when no meaningful consultation was occurred, in their own words. And yet the Mayor, our servant, signed that untruthful and despicably undemocratic open letter with LGNZ. The public subsequently may quite reasonably claim that that was not a mandate or a remit from the people. New Zealand Herald, 28th of May 2024, quote, forcing councils to hold a referendum on their decisions to introduce Maori wards will create division and needless cost for ratepayers. Again, our Mayor. Needless cost is avoided by abolishing Maori wards, I say. We feel that Maori wards have not just benefited Maori and local iwi, but also the wider community, unquote. However, no evidence was provided in the article or since. It is an empty, nice statement, in my opinion. Our normally elected councillors have always, and the records go back to 2016, on the website, had at least one councillor that identifies as and supported Maori communities. I've got a couple of quotes here from other parties, but I'll skip that in time of brevity. As will be seen later, there is more than adequate opportunity for Maori representation that is already entrenched in legislation, is being supported by policy and by the administration. I would challenge the two present Maori ward councillors what their pre-Maori ward experience is. One has one term and one has a couple of terms in council, what they could not have achieved while they were elected officials representing spatial constituents as well as local Maori. This is an overreach by the government. The quote is, this is an overreach by the government who have said that they want to devolve more responsibility to councils, Mayor Watson said. And yet we did not hear the same arguments in 2021 when the Labor government forced the legislation through under urgency and undemocratically placed unreasonable power into councils. The argument that this is just another ward selection process was always deeply flawed, never allowed to be argued in public, and clearly to the ratepayers is race-based and not based on a spatial need, community need. This legislation, quote, this legislation passes, will be forced to have a referendum on our Maori wards. This is actually an incorrect statement because the legislation was quite clearly publicised, and it included an option to not have a referendum So it wasn't a cut and dried statement in that respect. I look at that as a fear-mongering exercise. From LGNZ 2024 AGM report, quote, submission of the Horizons Region Maori Ward councillors. And the follow-on report, entrenchment of Maori Ward seats for local government, persists in this misrepresentation due to it not being supported by facts. We wish, quote, we wish to emphasise that the decisions by our respective councils to establish Maori wards in 2021 each followed an extensive public consultation process, whereby all members of the community had an equal chance to be heard and councils openly debated and decided the issues, unquote. What a strange words. Public consultation, no choice was presented to the community as to whether the wards shall be established or not at that time. Whether allowed by legislation or not, saying this happened does not mean it actually happened. This was clearly not extensive public consultation in any understanding of those words and misrepresents the process without describing the truth of what occurred. So skip that there. LGNZ has also deemed it, quote, balanced to choose not to provide any argument from those 13% present at their AGM who attended and obviously hold differing viewpoints. This demonstrates the lack of openness and transparency from this unelected group. Entrenchment is another strong word being used here, where it can only be assumed LGNZ wishes that there be no further polls about wards ever. That is in the documentation. This channel of democracy has been removed temporarily, and LGNZ wishes this to become permanent without an informed debate and not just for 2 triennials. Again, an undemocratic, unelected business who wishes to become a strong lobby group in Parliament and control councils through their version of representation is just another reason for us to remove ourselves from their group. Getting onto the local community committees and public debate, the inclusion of LGNZ opinions of Maori wards buried in the engorged quarterly AGM report does not, in my mind, constitute an item raised for discussion. The undemocratic remit is local government constituencies and wards should not be subject to referendum, using the well-debunked trope of, quote, should be treated like all other wards. Maori wards are race-based, not spatially based. Simple fact. LGNZ also has an arm which represents Maori elected members. I'm guessing this does not constitute just Maori ward councillors, but also those spatially based councillors who identify as Maori. Again, a bias. Representation by the public. Council presented TRAC as being the only committee that has reported their recommendation on Maori wards. This is partially true, but by virtue of omission. This appears to be the only committee where the council has directed or advised the issue to be placed onto their agenda. Other committees either have not met within the time frame, bulls, okay, nor has this issue been provided prior by RDC staff. And I put that under track order paper 13th August 9.1, consideration of Maori wards. I put it to you, there's been 5 other committees holding meetings since the assent to the Act. Community committees and boards are required to be informed by RDC of issues affecting their communities. Brevity for time. There's a large number of existing organisational opportunities, as I've stated before, legislated in the Act. Plus, there's a new position just been announced, a strategic advisor, mana whenua, $92,000 to $108,000 a year. Every referendum consultation by councils, bar one council, up until 2021, referred to and binding polls for the enacting of Maori wards resulted in an overwhelming majority negative vote. So this triggered the Labor government to tip the scales. Okay, the council's analysis for option 1 states there is a risk that people may vote on the poll without an understanding of the topic and implications. I counter this as false based on zero risk analysis. I recommend, crux of the matter, I recommend to council that option 2A is the favoured option by the majority of the community. Thank you.
Thank you. We've got about another minute. Are you happy to take any questions? Yes. Councillors, any questions?
Is anything I have said untrue? Sorry, I asked a question.
So Greg, thank you very much for your time. And I understand this is a public forum in your own right.
Yes, it is. I stand in my own personal capacity.
Thank you very much for your view. This matter will be discussed as part of the council order paper today. And it will be coming in under 10.1, which we'll get to reasonably soon. Conflict of interest declarations. Does anybody have a conflict of interest they wish to declare at this stage? No, thank you very much. In terms of the confirmation of order of business, it will be as reported in the agenda. Thank you. Confirmation of minutes, looking at the minutes, starting on page 5, looking for alterations and corrections. Pages 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Or was that a way?
Oh, no.
No.
Sorry.
10, 11, 12, 13. And the only question I had there was that council authorised the chief executive to enter into a contract, this is page 12, with Aircraft Construction Limited in a sole contractor arrangement for the design and construction Taipei Town Hall in accordance with the submitted program and decision-making holding points. I think it is actually correct, but I just want to make sure that people realise that there will be a price that gets submitted and so on out of those decision-making points. As I understand it, is that the view of Chief Executive?
There was, and I'm not sure whether there's a total, I can confirm that my understanding that there was a price to do what they were going to do before they came back. So we gave them a price for stage 1 effectively, and then they came back. And then they would be submitting on what they proposed to do, but I'm not sure a price attached to that.
Yeah. In retrospect, would you want to amend that in any shape or form? Or
I don't
could you look at that?
I can certainly look at it, but do you recall any bit?
Yeah, if I may,
Certainly.
we can definitely have a look at that. From memory, there was the budget, the allocated budget was included in the discussion. So they are aware that there's a maximum number and that all those bits will fit in and it will have to come back to council for review.
Could you just check?
We'll check.
And if it needs amendment, we could look at it next council. 14, 15. Would somebody then like to so move that? Thank you, Councillor Duncan. Councillor Pikitiora. Second and vote in favour. Am I aye? Carried. Thank you very much. In terms of the follow-up actions from the previous.
Worship question from down
Sorry,
here.
Pikitiora.
Aroha, I should have said this under the confirmation of order of business. Can I just say that I've got to be gone by 4:15 today?
That's fine. We'll note it in the, thank you. Noted. Are there any other early leavers? No, thank you. In terms of item number 7, the follow-up actions, page 16 of your report. Taking any comments around follow-up items 1, 2, 3, and 4. Please take some seats. Backward.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, the item number 4 that final submission to the Ministry for the Environment has been done, so that can come off. We haven't had a result from that, but I'll report that back when we get one. So that was regarding to that submission for the Ministry of the Environment to recover that 200,000 for waste.
Yes, what I saw in terms of the status comments was that the status comments probably aren't perfectly aligned to the question.
100% not.
Correct. Thank you. Sorry.
I'll just say that those, where that's been put from was actually from item 2, that's where that should be.
Yes, I agree. I think I have an arrow pointing back up to it. Thank you. Councillor Moore.
Yeah, item 5, the Otara Bridge, well, yeah, I think the update there is that it's all open and the residents out there are pretty happy.
And I haven't been there in the last week or so, but is the concrete blocks, are they still look throughout place?
They're apparently being removed.
So, and then the weight limits on it are as of what?
Whatever, class 1 or whatever they call it now, 45 tonne or something.
Yeah.
Can I reply to that, your
54
worship?
tonne of things. Councillor Duncan.
Yes, the class 1 is 46 tonne. It's one vehicle only, 10 k's per hour, and the blocks have been removed and only one vehicle at a time. Did I say that? And yes, the locals are very happy.
Can that message be picked up by council comms, please? Thank you. 6, 7, 8 and 9.
Your worship, has there been any further development on the Bulls bus lane?
Nothing further.
Question
but-
through me to the chief executive.
Yeah, but through you, Mr. Chairman, I do think that with what's happening in that particular bus lane, it's probably worthwhile us getting some sort of project team up to make sure that the other developments that are going on there are taken into consideration as well, and then we can come out with some sort of course of action. Otherwise, it's just going to keep popping up.
Thank you very much. Would somebody like to move, please? We received Councillor Carter, Councillor Charlton, second. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. Thank you. Moving to item number 8, the Mayor's report. There are effectively 2 reports here, the first of which is was written prior to the local government conference. The second accompanying piece is written post local government conference and as a report on that conference along with my interpretation of where it is. I'd just like to acknowledge the councillors that attended that. Councillor Piki Te Ora Hira. Councillor Hira, I apologise, I think there was one reference to you just as Councillor Piki. So that was something that I apologise for in terms of transcript and type. So that's not appropriate and we'll try and do better there. Councillor Loudon and Councillor Dalgety, thank you, councillors. 3 days of it's an intensive undertaking to try and understand what has been said in that sector and the amount of work that goes on behind the scenes and talking to fellow mayors, fellow councillors, etc. Yeah, so thank you for your interest. It's important that we have that interface. There are things in my report that will be dealt with as part of P&O, for instance, the Marton swimming pool. We'll be expecting a little bit of an update there. But I'm certainly not going to read my report. I spare you that. But I'll take any comments or questions around either of the reports. Councillor Moore.
I think it would go without saying that we discussed the Prime Minister's comments regarding councils. I think your comments on them that, it's a bit rich that we have a lot of our work is related to government policy, government direction, a lot of our costs as far as roading, earthquake strengthening, all that sort of stuff, 3 waters come from government policy. And, if he really wants councils to be more effective, let him concentrate on the jobs of getting it right.
First of all, we have a responsibility to be efficient. We have a responsibility in terms of ratepayer money, and those are givens. The Prime Minister raised a number of subjects, most of which I've dealt with in the report, but his comments around core business and going back and looking at especially CapEx programs, we will take that on board. We will have some form of workshop in conjunction with with the ELT senior staff, advice with that around those items. So, was quite critical of where the PM had spoken, but there is some truth in some of the validity in what he's saying. But I quite like the way the message was delivered. Councillor Loudon.
I'd just like to thank Mayor Andy and the council for the opportunity to go. I found it very inspiring and helpful, and certainly increased my knowledge of local government and where we should be heading. But thank you.
Councillor Piketty-Orahira.
Kia ora. So, yes, and I'd like to thank you, Andy, for your leadership. Our fellow councillors, Fee, Dalgety and Simon, we were one of the chosen ones that got to go down. So I would just like to say that it was, my journey started on the Tuesday with the Te Marawata, and I just want to acknowledge Bridget Bell that's sitting in the, Raiha Bell that's sitting with us at the moment. She is the a Māori Ward Councillor for the Manawatu, and I also would like to acknowledge Auntie Tari for coming. I understand it's for support around the Māori wards, but I just want to acknowledge you too. And as far as for those that don't know, and within our councillors around the table, the Te Marawata group, we are well represented by Raiha and her team that are, and the rest of the team that are in it, have been working tirelessly on the kaupapa around not just Māori wards, on a whole lot of different issues. And I just wanted to say on the Tuesday, I just want to mihi out to Coral. So for those that were not aware, I feel there was 60 or 70 of us that's elected members, Māori elected members, not just that were for places like Horizons, you know, regional councils, etc. And Coral happened to be in a space with a karaua called Peter Moiho. Anyway, Coral had spoken about how she was actually had gone down to Palmerston North, down to Wellington, because she was going to have a meeting with the National Party president. That was actually what Coral was going down to Wellington for, and so she had talked to Peter about that, and at the hui, Peter said to her to get up and kōrero. So one of to kōrero about what she was doing. So one of the wise things that, as far as I'm concerned, was a wise thing that this karaua talked about is that for Māori, we need to be across everything and all parties. And so if you didn't know, Coral was looking at being the Te Taihaoru national candidate. And so he told her, she got up and she did a really great job. I just want to mihi to you, Coral. And not necessarily an environment that's conducive to National Party members, but she stood there and she held her ground, and she talked about us as a council, the Rangitike itself, and she gave a really good kōrero on that behalf, and she was going back to the meeting later on that day. I feel like I'm not sure of the outcome, but she may give some feedback regarding that outcome. I don't know, but I just wanted to say mihi to you, Fee. Thank you very much. You saved our council. I'm sure lots of bucks, because I was able to stay for 3 nights with Fee. You know, I appreciate being having that opportunity, Fee, with you. It's the second. That's the second. Not AGM. LGNZ conference that I've been to. Went one in the first term. This is the one that I've been to in the second term. And what I want to say is that is the things that I heard, because we've all got a different take on things, but the main thing that I heard coming through from a lot of that discussion was the relevance and the importance of having Māori and iwi involved in relationships with their councils. So I just want to say that.
Sort of park that, because we've already discussed that.
Thank you.
Any further questions about Mayor's report or reports?
I'd just like to quickly add my thank you very much for the opportunity. I think I find it particularly good being able to rub shoulders with other councillors and realising that a lot of our issues are experienced elsewhere and seeing how they treat the problems we're facing. Thank you.
And I just should absolutely acknowledge our chief executive, Kevin, was there for the full time as well. Question?
I just wanted to mention, your point number 5 on page 19, Mayor Andy, around the Lake Ellis Hospital. Around the Lake Ellis Psychiatric Hospital, that sits within our district, and I'm pleased to see that mention is in your report, and I think we all feel a sense of responsibility and sadness, but it does look like some sort of recompense is being given out, so I thank you for putting that in.
Councillor
Your
Shaw.
worship, as a new councillor, I was very impressed with your detailed report because as a new guy, it gave me a lot of insight to what goes on in the background, so well done.
Thank you. Just for those online, in terms of Councillor Hero said was one of the lucky ones selected. So the process that this council uses is that everybody has the right to attend at least one local government conference. It is quite an expensive process in terms of registration, accommodation, flights, all of those sorts of things. And if there is some need for a councillor to attend more than one, then they have to justify that effectively to their elected members, and through the chair. So it's you were selected under those sorts of principles, but everybody has that right. Thank you very much. I will move that my report be received. Looking for a seconder. Councillor Duncan. First, Councillor Duncan. Seconding, those in favour? Those against? Carried. Thank you very much. I move to item 9, the Chief Executive's report, 9.1. I'll move to you. Is that moving again?
No, it stops over here, but between Katrina and I, we'll do our best to get through this. But so I'll just run through it, and if you're asking any questions as we go, feel free to do so. So just noting that the staff movements brought across all of the shared services people from Manawatu District Council, and we welcome them on board. And also you'll see the appointment of the roading transport manager, which takes a lot of the weight off Arno's shoulder in that regard, and Marton Skinner, who's that corridor access person. Just the health, safety and wellbeing dashboard. Kristen's here if anybody's got any questions regarding our health and safety report.
I'm keen on the mole map check.
Just on the exits and entries of staff, I'm just looking at the trends 3.3.4. You do exits, interviews and stuff like that, but it said the most commonly reported highlight was your organisational and team culture. Can you expand on that?
Yeah, I think I've mentioned this around the table, and I'm sure Kristen will come in behind that, but you've actually got a really strong organisational culture around here, which is very supportive. A lot of it is like family oriented, the family comes first. There is some flexibility built into that, and there's a really good camaraderie around. Kristen, do you want to add anything more?
Just that our employee engagement scores are at an all-time high, so we've been trending upwards for the last 9 months, and we've hit our highest engagement scores, particularly around the teamwork, organisation, culture.
I have to say the response here is always in the over 80%. Other organisations have been 50s and belows. So there's a huge, and they're not always good comments, you know, they're comments that need debate or things of improvement. But the engagement from staff here is second to none from what I've been involved with. So.
Councillor Duncan?
Yes, going back to page 26, number 2, there were no events held within our district parks. I just want to say that about 10 days ago, and so not last Saturday, the one before, there was the closing tournament in Taihape of the netball, and it was in conjunction with the squash tournament, which was also interregional. So we had people from Oakuni, Ratahi, Danny Burke, Palmerston North. And so they were run at the same time. And it was a very, very exciting and vital day for Taihape, and the Te Awa block was in full swing. I just want to say also that Councillor Wong and myself were roped into the walking netball game. I was centre as usual. And yes, goal attack. Were you not goal attack? Yes, so it was a bit like being in council, but it was a great day, and so I just wanted to mahi to that, to all the organisation that went on that day, and we had good weather. So thank you.
Yeah, these are routine things that happen. I didn't get an invite. I was there.
You were there.
I was there, but I didn't get to play in the walking netball.
Oh, yeah. Well, I was wearing my blue boots.
Anyway, we'll move on. In terms of time, we'll move
Thank
on.
you, yes.
As long as that's done.
Further questions of the Chief Executive's report? Oh,
Kia ora, just quickly, just to say that I'm really impressed from the last time that we've looked at his reports, that on page 28, I think it is, mana whenua implications, that it's been recorded that members of Te Rōpū Ahika and others that received the submission list and are allowed to have been asked for input. That's really good. Thank you. Kia ora.
From me, in terms of 8.1, the Marton pool, is there an update that you'd like to give us on that?
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, over and above the update that's in the report, we have had a structural engineer that specializes in the use of laminated beams. We've had them on site last week to come and have a look at that beam. And what we really wanted from this company and from this structural engineer is to consider why that beam failed, because that might affect what's happening with the other beams. So in that site visit, we decided on the following actions. The first one is, like I said, to determine why it failed, and then what can be done to make the structure safe and stable in the meantime. And is it possible for us to do something to open the pool for the season that's coming? So that's the most urgent priority for us at the moment, is what can we do to open the pool? The second part of that work is it possible to repair the beam, or are we going to have to replace the beam? What would that include, and what would the rough order of cost be around that? During his site visit, he also identified many other issues with an old building and the new standards that's applicable, and it's things that we would have to consider. So what we then said is, if we then have to bring the building up to modern standards, what does that look like? And what do the costs look like? He did mention to me that if we are going to spend a large sum of money just to fix the beam, is it time to consider what we can do as a minimum to bring that asset to a position where we would have an asset for the next 50 years. The point he was trying to make is you can spend a lot of money on that beam only, but still have an asset that's worthless. Is this time for a reconsideration? So all of that will come back. The first step for us is to make it safe enough and to come up with a way to open for the summer season.
Thank you. Any questions around that? No, I'll go then to, sorry.
I didn't have any questions about that, but in response to the upcoming consultations, 5.4.2, the Treaty Principles Bill, it's been talked about in here, it's being introduced by the end of 2024. So I'm glad that is on our radar, because I'm sure there'll be lots of people that are interested as to what will come out of
I
this.
suspect so. I'm trying to move through this in sequence. Taipi slip zone insurance, 9.1.
So I'll give these next four issues came up late, so I'll just give a quick update on all of them. Taipi slip zone, the fact that people within that zone are now not being able to get insurance. So we've had a bit of a debate about that this morning, but it's just acknowledgement that some of the properties that are in that zone and are changing ownerships do come under that, and that's an insurance matter really that can't be held, but we do acknowledge the people that are within that do supper. The item 10 was a new one to me, as some of the refrigeration trucks are parking overnight in Taihape. And they have big refrigeration units on that click on and click off, which are disturbing, but they are on a road. So we are looking as to whether there's any implications that we can, or any way that we can have some effect on that through legislation, or else that'll come back to council as to whether the council wants to take any initiative in taking them away from that area, because it is disruptive to people in the residential zone. So that's an ongoing, just an update. In terms of number 11, the old Mangaweka Bridge, my understanding of this, where this has come from, is that the group that were involved with the restoration and retainment of the bridge have, in consultation with ourselves as officers, have walked away from the MOU, which put, in my view, unrealistic expectations on a voluntary group. And my understanding is that they're coming back to us as what we can do, whether that's fundraising or developing paths around there. But if anybody wants that original MOU, which I understand has been through council, I'm happy to distribute that again. If there's any questions on that, no questions. Now the last one is Johnson Street, all those relocated buildings in the floodplain. They're right in an area that has been heavily flooded in the past. So we'll be taking action to have them removed by way of an abatement notice.
Can I ask you to circulate that MOU regardless?
Okay.
So what you're,
Yes, please, and if I may, so can you just clarify again, so staff are waiting for the Mangaweka Heritage Group to come back to them with what they want, is that where we're up to with
What
that?
they're able to do, but
Yeah, I can have that, if I may, I was at the meeting.
Yes.
At the meeting, they described to us that they don't have the capabilities or the funding to do the maintenance. We realized that the MOU would then come to an end because that's the way it's written. We then asked them, how would they like to be involved in the bridge and the management of the bridge? They said they'll go away and have a think about that. And that's when we received the email saying, we don't want to be involved in the management of the bridge. They would use the bridge as anybody else would, but that's it. So at this stage, we're not expecting anything else from them. That was the reply to the question.
Further to that, if I may.
Mhm.
I did
Fine,
read
yeah.
that email, and it did say that they wanted to be involved in fundraising and supporting in any way they could.
Yeah.
So is that needing to come back more formally to create a new MOU? I'm just, so I can advocate for.
I don't think it technically would need to be an MOU, but anything that they would do in terms of fundraising or something like that, rather than being a requirement, as it would be an agreement between two parties. So I don't think it has to be a formalised agreement like probably group do.
Thank you.
From the ongoing maintenance of that bridge, if we want, that comes back to council's responsibility, or is that a decision we have to make whether we maintain it or not?
LTP, that was part of the LTP process, so it's in there at the moment. And so you would have to make any decisions if you want to, when that works came on, you can make a decision as to what you wanted to do with that. But that's in budgeted for at the moment. Yep. On both sides.
thank you, councillor Sharman. I'm wanting to push on a little bit too.
Just because that Johnson Street thing's just up the road from me, has the notice been issued and is it going to be
That's my
removed?
understanding it's been issued.
I just don't know if I see what's going on.
Anything under 14? 15? Mana whenua implications 16, 16.1, 16.2, councillor Hero.
Just a comment, given that at last week's conference, it was made clear that this coalition government is looking to remove the well-beings. I'm interested to know what does that look like for us and anything that we're doing going forward?
Yeah, look, I'll make a comment. The four well-beings have been a political play for a long time. They were in, they were out, they were in, they were out, and now out again. Councils always have some degree of social responsibility, in my view. And irrespective of them being in or out, there'll be core values in terms of servicing our people, ratepayers that will continue to exist. And that includes things like swimming pools and libraries and employment and advocacy in terms of well-beings. However, you would have to question that if you were going to support, major motor racing as happened in Hamilton, then the council should be questioning whether that fits within their role. That's the short version, as I said. Climate change impacts and consideration. Anything there? No. Down to item 18.1. There's nothing there. 19. We have attachments in terms of the health safety dashboards and external submissions. Is there anything anybody wants to bring up there? There are a number of submissions that we are not submitting on. What I do is invite, and some of the timeframes are virtually impossible to comply with. What I'd like, councillors, if you have a submission that you think has to be made, and going through the schedule of them, I would invite you to email both the chief executive and myself around why you think it is important that we are the ones that submit on it. We have to consider staff time here. We literally do not have the capacity to submit on everything. And I'd rather see we submit it on what is very important to us and do it really well than submit for the sake of submission. I'm sure for those of us in the room that have sat in Parliament, they will be well aware of these processes and submission for the sake of submission. If there's nothing from the health safety dashboards and external submissions, I would like somebody to move that the chief executive's report be received. Councillor Dalgety moving, Councillor Morn seconding. Those in favour?
Aye.
Those against? Carry. Thank you very much. That takes us through to what is of high degree of interest for today in terms of, just looking at the page number, sorry. Page number 34. 34. Okay. Thank you, I lost track. This is the consideration of Maori wards and responses to the legislation changes. Now, before I ask Katrina Gray to speak to this, and with Council's permission, I'm going to set aside standing orders. I think it is the right for everybody in a community to know how people stand on this issue. You do not have to speak, but I'm setting aside the 3 for, 3 against. However, what I would ask is a degree of brevity. So if you start speaking for over 5 minutes on this, I will be asking you to kindly stop. To be blunt. It's your report. You wish to take us through it first.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I'll just speak to it briefly. So the purpose of this report is to provide that information for council to decide on its approach to Māori wards. You'll all be aware this is a decision required by legislation, an Amendment Act, which was enacted on the 31st of July 2024. So there's effectively 2 options to decide between. The first option is to resolve to retain the 2 Māori wards. And under this option, a poll would be conducted at the 2025 local body election. Option 2 has 2 parts to it, which is to disestablish the 2 Māori wards. And option A would be to revert to pre-2020 arrangements. And option B would be to undertake a shortened representation review. I would note that it's highly unlikely that our population would allow us to do option 2A. But everything's set out in the report, so I'm happy to answer any questions for clarification.
And before I take questions, can somebody move the receipt of the report? You, Councillor Duncan, Councillor Rakawa, is that you? Seconding, those in favour? Those against? Carried. Take questions of the report. Councillor Moore.
Question, 2025, if we do decide to have a referendum, the Maori ward still stay in place for that 2025 election?
Yes, correct.
And then they would, what, depending on the referendum, dissolve it at 2028. Is that right?
Correct. Councillor Rakawa, questions?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. If the wards were to be disestablished this year, when could another ward be established for the rangitaka in terms of the Māori ward? But, yeah, maybe.
So there would be a period of 2 terms before it could be re-established.
Okay.
And that would be part of the legislation. Any further questions? Otherwise, I'll move to debate.
Just a clarification on that, when, on Coral's question. If the Maori wards are dissolved, then we have to go back to create another council ward, or I didn't quite get.
We could revert to the old structure effectively, I think.
Yeah, through you, your worship. The most likely scenario is that we would undertake a shortened representation review, so that would look at determine what the makeup would be.
Councillor Rakawa.
Thank you. The cost of disestablishing in the ward as opposed to keeping it, is there a huge difference? Is there a difference? Is there a cost to disestablishing? I just want to know the difference in costs.
Certainly. So in terms of the cost of the poll, we've got a estimated cost of around 20,000. In terms of disestablishing and undertaking a shortened representation review, we've got an approximate cost there of around 20,000 as well. We would need to use an external contractor to do that for us, due to the timeframes, which are pretty short. We would need to decide on the initial proposal by 13th of September.
Okay.
Thank you. Before we go into debate, I will say there has been a number of people's opinions that have been emailed out to all councillors, and so I haven't re-forwarded those. There's been a number of submissions around this that have come directly to my office, some of which have come today that I've forwarded out. In terms of, I've had advice from the Runanga Ngā Wariki Ngāti Apa that they are supportive of the retention of the Māori wards. The timing has meant that I haven't been able to email that back to you, but I have a surety it came through the Chief Executive this afternoon. Is that as I say it? Thank you. It is important that we are speaking to a motion. Councillor Hero, would you like to?
Motion.
Would you like to move?
Recommendation,
Yes.
so that it gets put on our table, and I'd like to move that recommendation, well, 2, that council agrees to retain the 2 Māori wards, Te Kaitiaki Tai Coastal Ward and Te Kaitiaki Uta Inland Ward, and acknowledges a binding poll must be held with the October 2025 local election.
Looking for a seconder to that. Absolutely appropriate. Councillor Rakawa, are you wishing to second that?
Yes.
Thank you. It is now up to debate. I move to the mover to have first right of speech, and I will be allowing everybody that right of speech.
Kia ora, and thank you, Andy. This has been a contentious issue. engari, in my mind, it's just getting things right for Māori, whether people agree or disagree. Some of the kōrero that came this morning, I totally disagree with, and I'd be like to know where some of that information comes from. What I can say is they, having sat in the general ward seat and now being the Te Kaitiaki Uta Māori ward councillor, there is actually, in my head, it's a shift. There's a shift that's happened within my head of being a general councillor and shifting in as a Māori ward as putting forward the Māori ward and the Māori issues that are out there. So for those people that don't know me, what are my qualifications to sit around this table as a councillor? I'm part in this Rangitikei District Council for a number of years under a number of kaupapa, one being the Regional Partnership Program that was probably close to 20 years ago, I think. So I sat on as a delegate in that space. I've sat and I still sit as a Ngāti Whiti Kaupeka delegate on Te Ropuahi Ka, and I've been fortunate to be the chair of that space. I've also sat with another hat that I wear as the Pouwhaka Haere of Mōkai Pāti Services. We have had in past, we have had MOUs and we've had understandings and worked with our council very well. And what I can say is that sitting in the space as a Māori ward councillor for myself has meant that as much as I was there in a general ward for that 3 years, it's been a shift. There's definitely been a shift. So I just want to acknowledge all of those iwi runanga. So I acknowledge the person that spoke this morning, engari the people that are behind me. We don't talk about with one person's voice. So there's been a number of, you've just said that Ngā Wairaki Ngāti Apa Runanga has put in their support. They sit here up in the Northern Ward, Te Runanga Ngāti Whiti Kaupeka. Richard Stedman is the chair of that, and he talks for a number of people, number of our whānau, Te Runanga on Ngāti Tamakōpiri, that actually sent their kōrero to me, and I haven't sent it on to you, Andy. Te Runanga o Ngāti Hawati, Te Runanga o Ngāti o Huake. There's been the Mōkai Pāti Waitangi Claims Trust, Mōkai Pāti Services itself, Taipi Community Development Trust. There are a number, that is only a very small number of support that has come back, and to be honest with you, in a very short time. So from my point of view, what I want to see is us as a country accepting that we're here and we're going nowhere. And one of the things that got said at last week's conference by one of the people that was there was purely that, and people don't need to feel threatened. People don't need to feel threatened by a brown face that's in front of you. I count every single councillor around this table and our staff as people that are you're part of my Kauni Hira whānau. So I just want to say that you're part of my whānau that is part of doing this mahi. We sit here and looking, and it's not just Māoris only worrying about Māori. No, it isn't. And it's never been. It's about us being part of a full community where we're all looking after each other. So it's very frustrating. It's really frustrating because this is what you grow up with. I'm 59 years old now, and we're still getting into this kind of rubbish that comes through the door, and it's rubbish as far as I'm concerned. I have huge respect for every councillor. I have huge respect for our staff and everyone. People have got their right for their opinion, but that's that person's opinion. So when I talk and when I'm getting something that needs to get pushed through, it's not just me. I'm getting my feed-in comes from many places. So like I said this morning, Te Rangatupua was part of that, was there this morning, and that kaupapa got brought up about Māori boards. And so one of the things is because there's such an array of people around that table in Te Rangatupua, some have Māori wards, some don't. Whanganui doesn't, but Ruapehu does, we do, Rangitike does, and also Southern Taranaki. So
We'll get right.
Kia ora.
All right.
that's my kōrero.
I think that was 5 minutes.
Kōrero my whānau.
See, I'll go to the seconder and then we'll take. Councillor Okawa, seconder, do you wish to speak?
Mike, kia ora. did me up some notes. I ngā mana, i ngā reo, ngā karangataha maha, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. He uria hau no ngā ware ki Ngāti Apa, nui tunu, no Ngāti Tuwhare Toa, no Ngāti Kahungunu Hoki. He more hua hau. To those who have come today and those that are online, I want to acknowledge your support. And also to those who have come today or had come today with a different point of view. Kia ora. To our Pacifica and non-Māori whānau, thank you all for your support in regards to what we're talking about today. To my whānau hapua niwi, me ngā mōrehu katoa, ka nui te aroha kia koutou. Thank you very much for all your support, your enduring support and your words of aroha shared throughout this last week. The emails, the phone calls. I have been blessed to be to grow up and still be a part of the mighty rangitike. To my council colleagues, te ropu ahi ka reps and staff, thank you very much for all your tremendous support over my last 2 terms as a councillor in the general ward and now in the Māori ward Tikaitia Kitai. I also want to thank you for the opportunity to speak on this take and on this issue of maintaining our Māori wards. This recommendation is more than a step forward. It is a profound recognition of the principles of the Treaty of Waitangi. The treaty principles remind us of our obligations to each other, partnership, participation and protection. By upholding these principles, we ensure that Māori representation is not just a token gesture, but an integral part of our local governance. Our Māori ward, though still in infancy, we're only young here, is making significant contributions at the decision-making table and in our community, I feel. I've been privileged to move and speak to a remit at LGNZ, the zone meeting in Gisborne, regarding Māori wards. I've been able to, go and talk to the national president to ask, with the mandate from Te Maruata, the LGNZ group last week to seek a letter of support for Māori representation. I've also been able to provide, we have also been able to provide the cultural support at events that happen in and around our motu. So if we're talking about what are the things that we have been able to do and be a part of, these are some of the things. Also, offering a Māori lens over our citizenship hui. I think it's great what we're doing in our citizenship ceremonies and sitting at the table on different committees on council. That also is something that I feel that we help with as well. We do. These actions reflect our commitment to our partnership and embedding tikanga Māori into our civic processes. But additionally, and beside track, we've been able to broker relationships with marae and iwi communities, and particularly in the Papakainga and marae development projects, leading to measurable outcomes in our long-term plan. This work not only strengthens our infrastructure, but it also fosters economic development that benefits our entire region, benefits the rangitike. Our council has a proud tradition of fostering Māori participation through initiatives like the 2-year program. And our runanga, Ngā Wairiki Ngāti Apa, has developed a proud rangatahi leadership program called Marapi Tuatini, of which one of those graduates, Nessa, is our 2-year candidate today. So what I'm saying here is that this continuity is vital, providing pathways for Māori leadership, not just in local government, but extending it to seats in central government. The establishment of Māori wards strengthens this journey, ensuring that the Māori perspectives are embedded in governance at every level. I want to say that empowerment, inclusion and equity are not just words, they are the pillars that support the rationale for Māori wards. I didn't know she was going to be here today, but Auntie Dame Tariana Turia once said, aroha mai, kia ora aunt, to know ourselves, our strength and our challenges and chart our own course. These words resonate deeply within me as we consider the future of this community. The retaining and maintenance of Māori wards are also knowing ourselves, our strengths and challenges, and charting a course that honours our past while building a future where everyone thrives. And I agree with Trace. We're all sitting at the same table. We're all whānau in our Kaini header space. So together we can create a community where every voice is valued, where diversity is celebrated, and where our collective future is united. So today I vote in support of retaining our Māori wards. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā tata katoa.
Within time. Look, what I'll do is I'll run around the room. You have the right to speak. You don't have to speak. Councillor Wong, you wish to speak?
I have received a number of emails from both sides of the argument. I am in total support of our two Maori councillors here, and I will support this motion. The argument disestablished the Maori ward faction seems to be that we know what we want, and yet track and this decision we make today will come with a poll at the next election. So I do not see how the argument holds up. I saw that one of the mayor's comment that he didn't support Maori wards was because those on the Maori electorate didn't get a chance to vote for the other councillors, and perhaps some sort of split vote where they had a choice, maybe less choice. And I had that comment from a number of people in our northern ward that wanted to have more say in the democracy, which I believe the system's not perfect, but overall I will support this today.
Thank you. Councillor Dalgety.
Thank you. I will speak in favour of the recommendation. I value diversity around our table, and often your lens often makes me think a little bit deeper about things.
Councillor Lambert.
I am a favourite of option one.
Councillor Sharma.
I support Picky's recommendation and happy to go along with it.
Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Worship. Certainly a hot button topic. Generally, it's going to be rates first. The second one, unfortunately, in the last 6 months, is always something that's involved Maori, which is quite sad. And if you want to have a conversation with anybody out in the street while you're getting your hair cut or anything like that, your conversations will be diverse and they will be from many different people with many different views. We had a public forum today where somebody suggested that that view that was given was the view of the district. I take a slightly different view on that, but I respect that everybody has a right to have a view, and that is democracy as it is. I am in my third term on council, having done nearly 9 years, and I am very pleased and very proud and very confident to say that my decision-making processes for the benefit of the district have only ever been enhanced by hearing a Maori worldview and a Maori voice around this table, be it via independent election or be it by Maori ward representation. And I'm certainly speaking strongly in favour of the motion that sits before us today.
Councillor Carter.
I also am in favour of the motion. Having read all the garbage that's been sent through via email, there's a lot of confusion regarding the costs revolving around our two Maori wards, thinking there are extra wards. The previous triennium and the one before that, we always had 11 councillors. We still have 11 councillors, so there's no cost involving in that. And then, as Picky was saying regarding having a brown face sitting in that seat, she could be white, green or blue. Depends on the who stands for that position. Don't have to be married to stand for that, for it to be a councillor. So half of these comments that have been made are complete untruths. There's like some of the ones we heard this morning from our representative. With that, I'm fully in favour of the motion.
Councillor Moore.
Okay, I've just got to be honest, before I came on council 18 months ago, I was probably on the side of why do we need Maori wards? Showing my ignorance, I guess. But the 18 months I've been on, the contribution that Picky and Coral have made to this council, you know, couldn't fault it. The perspective, you know, is not, we're not getting Maori jammed down our throat. It's a collective view, and I really appreciate the contributions you made. I just think, you know, that talk about Maori wards as being separate. We've got our own ward system in this council. We've got Jill here representing Kaiapi. You know, these guys from the Southern Ward, you know, we have a ward system anyway, where each community, we even have community committees that represent an interest group, I guess. So I'm speaking for this motion. I think as far as democracy goes, if the referendum, it's a binding referendum, if it happens and it's a fait accompli, well, so be it. But the cost wise, to hold a referendum at $20,000 or a representation review at $20,000, I think the money side of things is just a, you know, red herring really. So totally in favour of this motion, and thank Picky and Coral for their contribution to this council and the wider community, not just the Maori community. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm in support of this motion. I had the privilege of being on Te Ropu Ahika, who gave the advice in the first place around the establishment of the Māori wards for the rangitike, and we have relied on their advice as a council for a long time, and they have given their considered opinion, which we took and ran with, and I absolutely have total support of our Māori wards. And the recommendation, this recommendation was recommended also and supported by Te Ropu Ahika. So I feel that that this is consistent with the way we have worked in the past, and this is a government direction. We will have to go to the poll, as everyone knows. I just want to also say, from a Taihape perspective, you know, I've been outed. We have a very high percentage of Māori in our district, in the Northern District. It's 38%, which is a lot higher than normal within New Zealand Aotearoa. And our school is above 60% identifying as Māori. And so we need that voice, and we need your voices, and I totally respect the way that it's happened so far. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Speaker. I'm fully in support of this recommendation. I joined council working in a partnership relationship, and I do find I have thoroughly enjoyed the partnership of Vicky and Coral. I enjoy what they say. They summarise well where we should be at as a council, and they represent the community and people really well. I attended Super Local, and the most impressive people there who spoke of community and what it means to be in local government for Maori. I am very appreciative of Vicky when she gives me a kiss when she arrives. And Cole brings lollies. I really want to more kisses and more lollies.
Thank you. I will speak. So I will be effectively the last speaker before it goes back to reply. I've sat in this chair for a long time, and there are very few things that you actually become quite emotional about. This is about doing what is right and fair and just. And that's what I say. Okay, Etiora, back to you.
Oh, well, I just want to say thank you to every councillor for the support around this kaupapa, an important kaupapa for this council, but actually for our country. You know, I just wish that more people were as brave as you to publicly say what you think, what you feel and what you think. Yeah, I don't feel like there's anything else to say, but just to say thank you and to get that recommendation passed. But but also just to think, again, as Carla said, all of those people, you know, I have forgotten you, but just to acknowledge the people that had come, Joe, that have actually come and your faces here. You know, I know that there's a lot of our whānau that are out there, and what I'd just quickly like to say in regards to the emails that we got, I've got no idea who any of those people were. Any emails that came in from our people, especially from the northern, they told you who they were, they told you who they represented, as opposed to a name on a generic email. That's not how we roll. Because we want you to know who we are. So just a mihi to everybody for being brave, and no doubt we may get bashed around a little bit for making a decision, but hey, we're used to that. We're used to getting bashed around, but just just to ask them that we.
Thank you very much. So we have had the vote of all of those in favour.
Right.
Those against, can records please show that we're all in favour. We'll take a break in a minute because there are probably people in the room that we wish to acknowledge as being here. There are people in the room that I hold in the highest possible respect. I thank them for coming here. We'll take a 10-minute break. First of all, before we move on, congratulations, councillors. Thank you. You have made me proud. So 10.2, the adoption of the smoke-free and vape-free policy, community housing policy. Jana, you get to take us through this.
Yes, so this report's to present for adoption two policies and a bylaw. The first one is the smoke-free and vape-free policy. And the purpose of that one is to reduce the prevalence of tobacco and vape products and the effects of smoking, vaping in public places. We consulted on this policy from the end of May to the start of July, and we received 13 submissions. The Policy and Planning Committee had delegated authority to hear the oral submissions, and 3 submitters chose to take up this opportunity. The Policy and Planning Committee also had delegated authority to deliberate on the policy, which occurred earlier this month. During deliberations, the committee accepted a few minor changes to the policy that was recommended by officers based on submission points. The main changes are removing the mention of ashtrays in the policy, extending the policy to include riverbanks, and removing reference to reducing the prevalence of cigarette butts in parks. The second one is the community housing policy.
We'll just deal with this one first. Can we take them one at a time?
Yep.
First of all, any questions around? Would somebody like, first of all, move reception of this? Thank you, councillor Carter, councillor Hero. Those in favour?
Aye.
Those against? Carried. Thank you. In terms of recommendation 2, would somebody like to move in that direction? Councillor Morney, you moving as?
No, councillor Lambert might like to move, and I'll second.
You can trade off how you like. Councillor Lambert, are you wishing to move?
I do indeed.
As stated?
As stated.
Seconded, as stated? You wish to speak to it?
No, it's been through policy and planning, and it's been well thrashed out, and look forward to it being implemented.
Any speakers?
Second that, yeah, same thing, the Policy and Planning Committee looked at it and did a few alterations, and yeah, as recommended.
Councillor Duncan, do you wish to speak to it?
I want to speak for it as well. I had the privilege of chairing this meeting and, the Policy and Planning meeting that this came in front of. And I think that the point that Councillor Wilson and I both made, and I think it's worth repeating, is that in reply to these submitters who felt that this was overreach and basically none of council's business, just to reiterate that this is in fact a policy, not a bylaw, and it's to support good behaviour and healthy habits, basically.
Okay, we've had 3 speakers for. Any speakers against? Right, a reply?
No.
Put it to the vote. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. Back to you, Jenna.
The second one is the community housing policy. This is an operational policy that sets out the way that we provide and manage the tenancy of community housing within our district. This policy has been reviewed and subsequently redrafted just to improve the clarity of the policy. We haven't made any changes to the intent of it. This policy was presented to the Policy and Planning Committee for input, who did not propose any additional changes. We've got Mike Hart here if you would like to direct any questions towards him.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Councillor Wilson, are you wishing to move?
Wishing to move, recommend 3 that the community housing policy be adopted.
Looking for a seconder to that. Councillor Rakawa is seconding. You wish to speak to it?
Just to reaffirm that it has been through policy and planning and was discussed at some length.
Any other speakers? I'll put it to vote. Those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. Back to you.
The third one I've got here for adoption is the Signs in Public Places bylaw. The purpose of this bylaw is to protect the public from nuisance and maintain public safety, regulate trading activities, and regulate signs in public places. This bylaw has been drafted with input from both the Policy Planning Committee as well as Council before it was adopted for consultation. We received 5 submissions and no submitters requested to speak at the hearing. The Policy Planning Committee did have delegated authority to hold deliberations. And through this, the committee recommended, in addition to the policy, to improve, to add an exemption for the Defence Force, just to allow them to undertake military training activities within the district. The committee also accepted an officer's recommendation to clarify clause 7.1, and the committee also recommended another amendment to this clause to further improve clarity. To adopt this bylaw, council must be satisfied that it's the most appropriate way to address nuisances and health and safety in public places, trading in public places and controlling signs, that it's also the most appropriate form of bylaw, and that it does not give rise to any implications under the New Zealand Bill of Rights Act.
Thank you. Would anybody like to move? Councillor Duncan, you moving as stated?
As stated.
Looking for a seconder to it. Councillor Charlene, you're prepared to second? Do you wish to speak to it? Councillor Duncan, you move?
No, thank you. That was just
Any
stretched out.
questions
thoroughly.
around us? Any other speakers? Put it to the vote. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. Thank you. Does that take us through to 10.3? So 10.3 goes through to page 70. This is the updated procurement and contract management policy. List of terms. One of our latest potential exports. The Fair Isles of Cocos Islands taking up employment there when?
Starts on the, I better find out. 23rd of September.
Thank you. Would you like to take us through this, please?
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. Very similar in nature to the previous item. Policy here that was reviewed and discussed at the June Policy and Planning Committee meeting, with some suggestions made then that have been incorporated into the policy. So really looking for council's approval. Any questions?
Questions, councillor Hero?
Kia ora. My own, what I was just trying to look for, and I found it now. I've got no questions. Sorry. Was it to do with the to do with the procurement rules around the 5% Māori businesses? Because I'd gone through it now. I've actually found it. Sorry. Because it is there.
Sorry, who am I missing? Councillor Wong.
Page 70, St Terms, 3.3. Third bullet point.
Yeah.
Does not necessarily.
Oh, require, sorry.
Oh, require, I see, thank you.
For me, page 76, in terms of general requirements, the consideration of local suppliers is where, and I presume it's in 6.2.3A. I'm just wondering if it should have been highlighted more. I agree that it is there, but as a general requirement, and it does talk around the weightings, etc. On 6.2.6, that where it's just could have been directed between 25 and 40%, unless impractical. I can see that it's there. I made the notes, started going through reading it. Is there any further comment there?
If you'd like any aspect of this to be highlighted or moved, that's it's a fairly straightforward thing to do.
Yeah. For me, I think it is quite a degree of local flavour, and if it could be highlighted in some way, that would be my preference as quite a general principle early on.
So just to clarify, that's section 6.2.6. greater emphasis on that.
Yeah, it's covered in 6.2.3A without thinking local.
Yeah.
But, yeah. Other than that. Councillor Duncan, Councillor Wilson,
I was just looking to move to receive if we were at that stage.
did you have a question, Councillor
I
Duncan?
do. I don't know whether
Come
this
to you, Councillor Wilson, Councillor Duncan.
appropriate. Just on that whole think local A, 6.2.3A, supporting vibrancy and sustainability of the local economy. I don't know whether how to say this really, except that I would like to bring it back into staff consciousness and our consciousness that there have been over the years team building opportunities where staff have gone away and had think tanks or whatever, and as councillors we've also had that opportunity, and they're very valuable. But I just want to say again that on 2 occasions they have been out of the district, and I think that's a real shame. I think wherever possible we must have these in the Rangatike to support our businesses, especially when there's a downturn and they're struggling.
Go to Councillor Wilson first.
Just looking to move to receive recommendation before we go to procurement.
I'll take that. Seconded. Councillor Elden, you prepared to second?
Yep.
Those in favour? Those against? Carried. Councillor Loudon.
Just on that localism flavour, if you look at the principles on page 75, 5.31, the first principle, as well as benefit the local community. So that's the main strategy that we work towards.
Yeah, I was just going to say through you, and this meeting, I think we added that in the principle for that purpose, was that we could bring it forward. Yeah, it was noted in one of the earlier rounds, so that we put it into the principles, and it was done. Yeah, I think in terms of, if you wanted to get something in terms of workshops or whatever held locally, you just give us a direction of that. I think there may be times that it's useful to go out of the district, but just a direction rather than.
Thank you.
Councillor.
Move recommendation 2.
Looking, you're moving that it be approved. Seconding, Councillor Lambert.
Approved with your earlier
Yeah,
highlighted comment, if
everything.
that needs to be noted, otherwise if the staff are able to take it on board, then.
I think Kevin's comment
You
was.
wish to speak to it?
Yes, I do. I think it's important. I've gone through this document quite thoroughly. There's several things that I note in there. The idea of a tenders board, a procurement boards, the idea of having some involvement from elected members throughout that process. I also note that the head of the department may be directly involved, is not involved in that. So that gives us a little bit more surety of sound decision making, and also the fact that there will be an external expertise required, depending on the nature of it. But this is a guideline, and depending on the type of procurement that is required, it may not necessarily mean that it has to meet all of the objectives that we've set in this policy, but it should be a guideline. Provided at the upfront of any discussion of procurement, then that will be the best way that we go through. We can't sit back and expect to tick all of the options in here, but it is a guideline for consideration that a future tenders board made up of elected members and external expertise may bring, depending on what the nature of the procurement is that's been considered. But I think overall it's a sound document. I think it does give that guidance. So I think in its state that's been presented and discussed in policy planning, it should be approved.
Yeah, Councillor.
Yes, I'm speaking in favour of the recommendation, but it is a policy, so it is probably more than a guideline.
Look, I'll speak in favour of this as well. I think it is very easy to start straying into processes that don't stand up to real scrutiny. And at times it can be an easier option to say, oh, we'll just do this or this. But this is best practice, absolutely. So I'm strongly in favour of this. Wish to write a reply?
Just to say, I agree 100% that it is policy, and Councillor Dalgetty's comments are absolutely correct, but mindful that we may face a situation where the policy cannot be met 100% of the way. I'm just making you aware of that.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, we added a clause in for you. It's 6.10 after D, which says in such instances where a deviation occurs, needs to be authorised by the tenders board, and we put it in for you. You or someone.
No, I'll put it to the vote. Those in favour, those against, carried. Thank you very much. That brings us to the reports for information 11.1. This is the PMO office report. First of all, reception of it. Thank you, Councillor Wilson, Councillor Sharland. Those in favour, those against, carried. Thank you. And
13737.
I know that we've passed this, but just in terms of the follow-up with my comments earlier, in terms of that strengthening, just under the 5 principles of procurement, that was basically covered. Right.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I think I'll just step through them and then see if we have any questions. I might just note what the latest update is really. So if we start with the first one, which is Marton to Bulls, the real update there is that the next workshop is on the 11th of September, and that's so they've gone from the long list to the long list, and then it'll go to a shorter list of possible options of 4 to 6, and then those 4 to 6 options will drill down into a lot more detail into those. So any questions around that one?
So when do you see the touch point with council as such?
It will be possibly towards the point where we need to determine which is the best suited option. I would imagine once they select the 4 to 6, we need to then do a lot of work to then bring information back to councillors to say this is the cost, this is the complexity. So we need to work through all that before we can present it to you. But that would be the next step, and then we would have to pick one and then prepare the application for that.
And in terms of the information that's coming towards you at the moment, do you see any big red flags rearing their head?
Yeah, Your Worship, that's a really good question. There's a lot of change in this space at the moment, and it's something that we have to consider very carefully. For us specifically, it could mean a different view on many things. So if there is a national standard for wastewater governed by Taumata Arawai rather than consents, that's a whole different world. And that seems to be speeding along. We don't have any more information other than that's the plan. But yeah, that will definitely have to come back to council.
Thank you. 3.2.
Yeah, 3.2 is the Ratana wastewater land discharge. I think the only real update there is work continues as approved and as agreed by council. So that will be the pipeline and the land disposal on the land that we own. The only update is we will still look at the alternative. Obviously, if there is a financial gain or it's better for us, then we'll bring it back. In the meantime, we'll just continue with the work as it is approved. And there will be no variation from that until we have the nod from council.
Councillor Loudon, Councillor Wilson, Councillor Loudon.
3.2.2, just concerned about if those pipes and valves have been degraded. Is there going to be a cost to council if they are, or how does that sort of work?
To ensure they don't degrade. So,
Yeah. There's a classic case of one of our very big stations in the north who bought an enormous amount of pipe, and it sat there for a very, very long time deteriorating. Councillor Wilson.
Very much just looking at the time frame here on this project, July 18 with a suggested completion date of December 24, which is not looking likely. And we understand where this has gone. It's bounced around. There's been a number of complexities around it. But is this something that we just have to accept as council? That's the time frame that these types of projects take. Is that just what we expect? And is it likely what we're going to expect with our future projects? Is this just the way it is?
A good question. As it stands now, with disposal to land and all the complex things that comes with it, and that's not just us, it's across the country, it does take very, very long. We must also remember we are just stepping into the consenting process, and if any other neighbours are not completely on board, that could take a lot longer as well. So there are many unknowns and many complexities involved.
Not for discussion now, but perhaps at a future workshop, which I think is the place to have these sorts of discussions. How do we protect ourselves from that period of time with a price point that's at a given time was 6 months down the line? Is there some way to protect ourselves what will ultimately be cost blowouts because of that delay?
I don't think, through you, Chairman, I don't think there's any way that you can protect yourselves from the cost blowouts, but remember we tried to give you a percentage of confidence in it and tried to change that so that the auditors knew, because Orano gets often attacked because the budgets are unspent. And that's a real issue for local government at the moment, because one objection to some of those consents could hold it up for 12 months. So you've got to, but he has to budget in years. So I don't think there's any simple answer that'll ever make that any better.
No, I guess I understand that. I guess what I'm saying that for our future planning with regards to long-term plans and LTPs and impacts on rates and things like that, is it something that we have a factor that gets added into it with an expectation that it will be? I don't know. It's probably not for this meeting, but it's difficult.
The auditors, I don't think that's an issue.
Yeah, that's right.
Also, if I may just add, the CEO makes a really good point. The way we have costed in this LTP is we've given it a range because we know it's uncertain when this will happen. So we are telling the ratepayer, actually, it'll be between this number and a very high number of here. And at the moment, we're in here somewhere, and we're about 60% sure that's where it falls. But that gives you a more realistic picture of what might happen in this space, rather than saying 10 million and you're way out. But really handy tool. All right, if we'll move along to
take your point, councillor, but that's what.
I just think we need to continue to signal it because it's.
And that's a fair comment. 3.3
Papakai, it's just practical completion. It's just about there.
Councillor Duncan.
Just a wee point that the Friends of Taihape are also organising an opening event for the bridges, and I just would like to give the heads up that might be something you could coordinate with.
Thank you. 3.4.
3.4 is the treatment plant upgrade. That's also nearing completion at the moment. All the equipment's been installed. And we'll just keep monitoring as we go ahead.
Thank you. Councillor Wilson, Councillor Duncan, Councillor Wilson.
Sorry, if we just jumping back to Papagai, which very pleasing to see that's nearing completion or has been completion. It's two different figures in the project budget and the spend. So is that, I mean, looking at it on the face of this report that sits in front of us, that's good, or is there a final claim pending that we would see at the final wash up? I suspect probably. No?
I don't know. I noticed the same thing. Actually, I noticed it this morning in the financials, but I'll follow up and they can just be sure that I understand what's going on.
Congratulations. You've eaten silver chocolate fish. Councillor Duncan. I picked it up.
Just quickly on that one, remember there was a saving from the tank that went in at the time?
Yes,
And so that might
there was,
reflect-
but not to the extent it's been indicated in this report.
Councillor Duncan.
Yes, I wanted to say what a great visit that was. We had with the Heavy Wastewater Treatment Plant committee, went and visited. And it was very enlightening, and I was so impressed with the staff member there who answered all the questions. And it's such a good thing to know that those membranes are working and that the water is re-entering the river in such good condition.
Couple of questions from me. The first is with regard to Papakai. Is it completed to the stage that it can now be removed from the PMO?
Yep, yes, actually, yes.
So, do you have complete surety in that position? Because this needs to be that is relevant.
So the update on that is after practical completion, which is now, there is a 1-year defects liability period. So that'll the clocks start ticking now. But I think we remove it. I'll only bring it back if there's a problem or something happens. Other than that, it's done.
Councillor Wilson, your
Just
chair of
on that.
assets.
Yeah, because the next one with the water membrane one also indicates a less than, but I would be comfortable enough for it to be removed if we've done, as you say, practical completion or it's been practically handed over in that respect. But I would also want to see it then come back with a final budget analysis at the same time. Because it's quite important. If you look at those two numbers there, there's a couple $1 million floating around there.
Yeah, so
Maybe through you, maybe the sign off is practical completion, round up in the budget. That's the final report of any of the projects. Once that's done, then we can move on.
Yeah.
Take it on.
I'll go Councillor Duncan, then myself, Councillor.
Yeah, I'd be happy to take it off as the Papakai wastewater pump station. But I am a little bit concerned that council may still have some obligation there to finish off from a council perspective, some tidy up. Yeah, which is a different thing, just honestly. Yeah. Right, thank you.
Thank you. So in terms of me, noting that I've just removed a significant amount of workload, I would like to put back into the PMO, the Marton swimming pool. So it would be a useful place to be able to handle, what could be a complex position, and the earlier we get it installed and routine, the better, I think. So I'll move formally that the Marton swimming pool move to into the PMO positions. I can second to that. Councillor Wilson seconding. Anybody against? Those in favour?
Oh, sorry, excuse me, I'd like to speak against that. In that I feel that this is actually potentially a very large issue and there could be a huge amount of money spent on it. And I would like that to come through council more formally before it goes into this as part of our projects. I'm potentially, and correct me, I'm happy to be corrected, but it would seem to me that with this potential for a large amount of money, it should in fact almost come back to an annual plan process. If we were going to take certain things out of our projects and swap it around as perhaps we could, I think it needs to be looked at better, and I think almost
this doesn't preclude that. This is a repository for information and etc. So any significant decision would have to come back to full council, and if it was of a significance that it had to go to an annual plan or LTP consideration, then it has to.
Thank you.
So
Yeah, it doesn't have a budget line in it, so it's just about doing it in the report, so we've got no budget.
And it might help Councillor Jill too, is that remember any project has to have a definition as to what you're actually trying to do. So when that comes back, it'll come back to council, which will then be defined as to how we're going to deal with it, or how are we gonna fund it, finance it, all of those things are kind of.
That's a problem when you take over that machine.
I tell you, I've got,
Yeah. Maybe we should new builder. Water projects 3.5. And do I go to you first, Arno, or?
I have a question on 3.4.
Yeah, sure. I just,
It's gone. Just near the end of 3.4.1, DFS have been monitoring the plant remotely and intervening as needed through commissioning phase. Is there any mechanism that council can do that rather than have staff on site that they do that?
yeah, we can do that. Yeah.
okay, you're satisfied?
Yeah.
3.5.
Thank you, Your Worship. 3.5, I'm happy to pass it on to Ishmael. Thank you very much.
I can see that again.
The trial plant has been going very well for the last 8 or 10 weeks now. But in the last few weeks, there's been a bit of movement in the data that we see. But apparently that data was on the feed side, not on the output side. So when we checked, there was a bit of an oxidation in the pipeline that was supplying the water to the trial plant. So since we've since flushed the pipe and all that, so we've got to revamp that system again and start going back and then slowly ramping it again. So we lost about 3 or 4 weeks there. But in that process, we also realized that the hardness level that we are trying, that the output is showing is, though it's within the accepted standards, the quality parameter that we set for this project is far higher. So what we are looking at now is upgrading that membrane. So they've just brought in a next level membrane which could do a better rejection rate at no extra cost. So that they've already confirmed doing a better product at no extra cost. So what we have done is we've put the new membrane as of yesterday in the trial plant, which means we'll put the trial plant in the treatment plant for another few weeks, again slowly ramping it up to and then finding out rejection rates. At the end of this process, we will move that trial plant to the new bore site. All the infrastructure that needs to be moved is already done on site. Just because of all this oxidation issues, we've not been able to move the trial plant, but it should be moved in the next few weeks.
Question from me. So membrane's been changed at no extra cost. But for instance, these membranes don't last forever. So if there is a significant price between what was in place and the new type of replacement, does that change that cost structure? Does it change power requirements? Anything else?
In terms of cost, yes, there could be when it comes to replacing, but in terms of power requirements, we've not established it yet. So in the process of running this trial plant is when we will establish those consumables and power costs, all that.
So it doesn't change the amount of Q's mix of water that can go through it or anything like that? Okay. Then I'll go Councillor Wilson, then back to myself, Councillor Wilson.
Yeah, your comment there, more recent tests have been hampered by turbidity problems caused by iron manganese oxide in the feed pipes. Has since been rectified and the test is now resuming. What, is there something wrong with the pipes in the manganese oxide? So have we had a look back to see that we're not going to end up with the same problem? We just keep.
No, so what we did was we tested the water directly at the bore, and then we tested the water after it's come through the pipes. So they were drastically different. So we know something is happening in the pipes.
So what's the fix?
I think there was a bit of leakage. So there was a bit of oxidation happening through that leak. And then there was also contaminants in the pipe itself. So we've since flushed that whole pipe, fixed that leak. And then now it is.
Is that a new pipe? Or
no, it was an existing,
existing
it was
pipe?
an existing pipe.
So there may be a different type of pipe that needs to be used to avoid this in the future.
So we'll continue to do this test for another week or so. If that doesn't change, then we're parallelly looking at see if you just have to put another pipe for this trial plant, quick one, just to get the feed pipe.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Understand that.
And back to me in terms of, again, there's nothing mentioned in terms of the warranty aspects of this.
No, all that will be at the end of this trial plant when, we've agreed on what the consumables are, electricity and all that. That's when we will.
Yeah, I'd just like to see constantly in these reports a reference to it.
Okay.
So the last thing I want is it drops off people's memories and nothing happens. Any other questions, councillor?
I just back to your original question. So these new membranes cost more than the original ones.
I would assume so, because it was at the same price, we never got into the discussion of finding out how much it's gonna cost.
Right.
So if it was a cost that was gonna come back to us, probably we would have looked at it.
So, right, so since they haven't come back, you're comfortable that the cost is not.
We could look at it. So
significant?
that's purely from the question that what happens in terms of replacement.
Right.
Yes.
If I may, Your Worship, just make a comment on that. So we worked out the whole of life cost of the asset, which includes the replacements. So what we will do, just to be sure we tick it off, is add the new.
Yeah, that's what I was getting at.
If it makes a substantial difference, we'll bring it back.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
I've got two more comments just on that project, if I may.
Sure.
First, as you'll notice under 3.5.5, the new estimated date is April 2025 for it to be up and running. So that's something to keep an eye on and we can focus on. And the second part is we will still organise an open day for the public up at the plant. We're just trying to figure out when it will be something to look at, something that people can understand what will happen and what it would look like. And then we'll make that date available and people can come around and have a look.
Thank you. 3.6.
Marton offices, we've had a series of workshops with governance reps, CLT and staff representatives, and we're at a very good space in terms of identifying what we want to achieve with this building. So initially what was projected was just the PMO, just taking the existing setup and just trying to find out how much it's cost. So now we've taken a step back. We've gone through workshops to find out what we want to do in terms of whether it's going to be open offices, in terms of staff numbers, whether the group managers want to sit in an open office or inside offices. So we've gone through a series of discussions, and we are at a point where we've identified all of those. So as the next step, so the architects will put together a document finalizing all of the scope. The only thing probably I want to highlight is in the process of doing that, there's been a bit of increase in the footprint that we had originally envisaged. So we had looked at about 1,500 before, but it's as of now it stands at about 2,200. What that means in terms of pricing is something that we'll have to look at subsequently. Apart from the scope document itself, we've also got site contamination tests done. So what we realize is most of that contamination is in and around that residence and the green plot in the corner. But that's also simply because that's the only soil area that's available for them to test, because the rest of the area is pretty much concreted, so they couldn't. So there's two parts to it. So as with the residents, there's one is the contamination and the other one is the archaeological aspect of it. So the archaeology has come back and said, so there's no archaeological impact on that particular residence itself. But that doesn't rule out the rest of the plot itself. For now, yes, the residence is not bound by that archaeological issue. So the thing is, we could look at demolishing or moving the house. So I'm working with WSP at the moment to see what works best, because if we demolish, there's going to be a bit of contamination again. And then if you disturb the soil, then again, we need a consent and all that. So we're trying to work around that. So if that goes ahead and if we get the residents moved, yes, we could do a larger survey and see how much of that soil contamination extent that could be determined. But on the other side, with respect to the underground tanks, we know there's something, the radar detected something in the ground, but unless we dig we won't be able to ascertain that. But just because it's sitting very close to the building and it's in the car park area, that's something that we will have to do it along with the demolition when we develop this building.
Thank you.
Question here, you
Just
one question on the building itself. What's the floor area of the library space? What's been allocated so far?
I think it's about 400, 450 if I'm not wrong.
It's 450.
450.
3.7. Sorry, councillor.
The extra size of the building, was that catering for Horizons?
Yes. Within that 2200, yes, horizons are also inside.
Just so you're aware, what we're trying to do is keep Horizons in for as long. If you think of where the government's directing us, that would be a good collaborative example of everybody working together. The issue for them is they've got to make a decision to do that. And if we push too hard and they have to make a decision early. So we are trying to get that our development done, so it's either an add-on or up floor. It can either be taken off or dropped down. So that we're trying to leave them with as much time. They've got other big decisions in terms of capital expenditure as well. So we're down the end of that train for them. So we're trying to direct our architects to develop a proposal that is like an addendum to it that can be taken off.
Thank you. Councillor.
I'm just interested, is it public knowledge what would happen to the space they're in now?
Horizons?
Yeah.
That's not, no. Well, I'm certainly not even aware.
That wouldn't suit us, would it?
You had a look?
Well, we've got a lot with a different lens now.
I'll move on. 3.7.
Taipei Grandstand, the consultants are working on the 4 concept design, so they should come back to us first week of September. And we've already lined up a QS. So once those design options come, so the QS will be looking at it from a cost perspective.
Thank you. 3.8. Sorry, councillor.
I'm just a little bit uneasy with this in terms of the rugby people who are adamant they want to use underneath that grandstand. I see the Hunterville grandstand, which has been renovated to, let's say, best described as minimal basic standards. Is any of that thinking going into this plan?
Into using the underground.
Yeah.
So what we're trying to do is figure out what the seismic strengthening cost alone comes first. If that's going to be far beyond that 1 million budget that we have set, that's when we'll have to start looking at where's that funding is going to come from.
Thank you.
3.8.
Taiape, Maycroft have since visited the site last week. So they're coming back with a list of inspections that they want to do. Some of those are very intrusive. So and they plan to do these investigations sometime the first week of September. They're doing this from the 9th of September to the 17th of September is when they've planned all of this in the back. And we're also trying to see how insurances work, because it's not a site that we fully hand over, but it's like the site still belongs to us, or we just have as a third party entering inside and doing work. So that's something that I'm working with Dave and his team. Otherwise, the investigation should happen between the 9th and the 17th, and we expect them to come back with the initial report by the mid of October, and then a detailed report by end of October. So we should look at seismic options sometime by mid-November is when we'll start looking at what does the seismic issue looks like.
Councillor Duncan.
Thank you. Thank you for this report and update. That's great. It's exciting. I just have one thing. I was given a calendar invite to looking at the site, I know that other councillors had expressed interest. I'm unable to attend, and I was a bit miffed, I have to say, that the other councillors who are not of the Northern Ward were scheduled first. And I would have thought that the Northern councillors might have been asked what suited them a little bit before that meeting was scheduled.
Can I reply to that? It's
Not on it.
what there was about at the last assets and infrastructure, it came up that some of the councillors don't know the building, haven't been in there. So when we talk about it, it's different. They have a different frame of reference, and all this is to allow those councillors to go and have a look at the building
Before work
Is it-
started, that was my understanding.
Yeah. but nothing more than that. And it was specifically councillors from outside the Northern Ward that don't know the building. It's people that don't know the building.
Yeah, I agree that was the directive that came out of the workshop.
More that you, Jim.
Can I say something further?
Well, let's see how far you go here before I might come in, yeah?
From my perspective, and I totally get that, and I really applaud that, because it would be great if I could speak to people who knew what they were talking about. Sorry, that was rude. But what I mean is that from my perspective as Northern Ward, as actual users of the building, who have a relationship with these councillors, it would be very valuable for them to be able to say, actually, how has this building been used? And I think that a staff perspective, no offence to staff, and a user perspective is different. And in fact, for them to have the benefit of our knowledge and experience would be actually very helpful.
Taking point.
Thank you.
I've got one on the 4th of September up there.
Yeah, 4th September at 10.
I can't make it.
How about, in terms of timetabling, it's incredibly difficult to go to groups of people. And literally times are tight, so often staff just have to move and say, this is an availability we have. Councillor Hira.
I just wanted to make a comment with what Joel's talking about, and it might be something. It might be a good thing if we just don't forget that those that are within our ward system and how we've made up. And I know that it went through assets and infrastructure meeting, could be involved. So if there's something in central, something in northern, something in southern, that at least they are made aware of it in the first instance.
I think that was the direction through you, Mr. Chairman, is that invitation went to everybody. It was focused on those that hadn't seen it for that purpose, and everybody was invited to go. And it needs to happen at a certain time before the others start getting in. That was my understanding. And so to try and accommodate.
I think we've done this to death, to be honest. Move on, 4.1.
Thank you. Your Worship, that's back with me. That's Scott's Ferry. There's been no further movement on that. Besides, obviously, we have an alternative solution to what we had before. It's been agreed by everybody, and we're just working on the memorandum of understanding, and then we'll look to buy a new tractor. Any questions on Scott's Ferry?
So long as you're keeping that owner of the land and owns the plant up to date.
Yeah, I spoke to them today.
But just, when we say we buy a new tractor, there are a huge number of tractors available on the market that are not new. This is not a tractor that's going to be doing a huge amount of agricultural work.
Let me correct my English, Your Worship. A different tractor.
A tractor new to us.
To the one that's there now.
An alternative tractor.
Yeah, an alternative tractor.
Let's get into conversations about its colour. 4.2. The bridges.
Yes, the bridges, the update is the only news I have, but that seems to be tracking along.
Anything further on this?
Just a quick comment on that. I did actually see the contracted person yesterday and the work has recommenced.
We're good.
Thank you. Councillors, anything else on terms of project management? Otherwise, I'll move through to the reception of minutes under 12. No, I'm hoping that somebody actually moves this, sorry, councillor.
Oh, no, I was gonna move the.
That's what I wanted you to do. On block. You're wanting to move the reception of minutes
Yes,
as a block.
yes.
Have we got a seconder to that? Thank you. Forest of hands. Councillor Dalgety, you first. Those in favour?
Aye.
Those against? Carried. Thank you. That just takes us to motion to move into public excluded, as I believe it.
Only one.
Staff of the, anything I haven't dealt with. Would somebody like to move? Thank you. Councillor Okawa, Councillor Wilson, those in favour? Those against? Carried. Councillors, how long do you want to take as a